Hi everyone, my name is Sebastian House. I'm with my group here, Group 2. We're going to be going over Afghanistan today. Can we go to the next slide? All right, thank you. Current day Afghanistan. Right now, they're estimating at a population of about 39 million and expected to grow to 39.2 in 2022. The capital is Kabul. Their official languages are Pashto and Dari. Their currency is the Afghani. Currently, the Afghani is trading at 1 USD to 88.5 Afghani. Back in 2012, their GDP was 20 billion, and it actually has decreased to 19.81 billion in 2020. Right now, we're looking at a low income classification for their country because of that. So some facts about Afghanistan. It's actually known as the graveyard of empires. Reason for that is because they have many invaders over their history. You can see here that the Persians back in ancient times, all the way up to most modernly, the British Empire, the Soviets, and even the United States of America. A famous book from the region is The Kite Runner. It's about a boy growing up and struggling with the traditions of the area, and how he compromises with it is being a kite runner, which is a little a little sport that they play growing up. Being a kite runner, you fight other kites and then go collect the ones that you defeat in a little combat. The national sport that they like to play here is Buzkasi. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Over here to the right, you can see a representation of Buzkasi. You ride on horseback and you're competing against other teams trying to carry a goat carcass. I think that's pretty unique. And something about the area is it's actually been inhabited for at least 50,000 years. So most recently, as most people know, the US has been involved in Afghanistan for over 20 years now, and it's actually withdrawn from the area as a result. As you see here, they ended their, I guess, occupation of the country back in August 30 of 2021. The result being it led to the unfortunate fall of their Islamic Republic and the restoration of the Islamic Emirate controlled by the Taliban. And because of that, 2.6 million Afghans left the country and 3.5 million are internally displaced currently.
All right, howdy everybody. My name is Johnny, and I'm going to be discussing some of the geographic characteristics and factors of Afghanistan. So, Afghanistan is located in the Middle East, and it is landlocked by six other countries. Those are Pakistan, Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and you can see on that bottom right picture there is a little breakaway part that actually borders all the way to China. In Afghanistan, only about 1/8 of the total land is considered arable, and there is very scarce rainfall as well. So it's not very good to grow crops because the soil is not very fertile and it does not rain a lot there. The summers are very hot and the winters can get extremely cold as well. For reference, it is compared to the US state of Wyoming, and the Hindu Kush mountain range actually runs through Afghanistan. You can see in that bottom left picture, this is a picture of part of the capital city of Kabul. And you can see that, it's very hilly as well. And way in the back, you can see a very tall snow-capped mountain. And it's actually located among the ancient Silk Route, which connects both Asia and the Middle East. So it's sort of like I guess, a meeting point between the Middle East and the Eastern cultures. And mountains are often seen as a disadvantage in the country because they prevent transportation and make the rural communities who are located in the mountains and around the mountains very hard to access, and it makes trade very hard as well. So as I mentioned earlier, Afghanistan is located in the Middle East, but it borders Asia as well. in comparison to other surrounding countries in the Middle East, it's relatively underdeveloped, not completely or not super underdeveloped compared to the rest of them, but there is a significant underdevelopment compared to the rest of them. The 2020 GDP per capita was just under 509 US dollars, and it is one of the lowest income countries in the world. And over the past 30 years, there have been a lot of political instabilities and economic troubles over the past 30 years, which I will talk about more on the next slide. So these political struggles have been between the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, which was their de jure government, and the Islamic Emirate, commonly known as the Taliban, which by the UN has been labeled a terrorist organization. And for 30 years, these two factions have kind of been battling for territory, but neither have ever really gained 100% total control of the country up until August 2021, when the Taliban pretty much completely took over Afghanistan. And you can see in this picture here, or this map, it shows just days before the Taliban took complete control of Afghanistan. Pretty much all of the Taliban in red here is surrounding the capital city of Kabul, which was the last surrounding city that was controlled by the Islamic Republic government. And ever since late August 2021, the Taliban have been the de facto government in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is still part of the UN, but the Taliban government is unrecognized by virtually every other country in the world. And ever since the Taliban took over, there has been sharp economic decline. And one economic analyst from CNBC predicted the economy to actually shrink up by up to 30%.
Howdy, everybody. My name is Josh Morset, and I will be talking about the historical data and growth in Afghanistan. And so Afghanistan saw many different rulers over its history, mainly due to political instability and wars. And following the end of the Second World War, Afghanistan wanted to strive for quick economic development to be a part of the post-war economy surrounding them. Though they were newly independent and under new leadership, they relied now on the USSR for economic and military assistance. Afghanistan continued to have a close relationship with the USSR for nearly 25 years. Then in 1978, political unrest in Afghanistan led to a Russian invasion. The Second Cold War was the start of, sorry, let me go back. After many years of fighting and political instability, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban rose to power in 1988 till 1995. Osama bin Laden became a leader of Al-Qaeda and put the blame on the United States for many regional conflicts. Bin Laden carried out the 9/11 attacks, which only created a new 20-year war with the United States. And then in 2021, American troops withdrew, causing a decrease in the foreign aid that Afghanistan was given. Afghanistan's GDP is highly correlated with their military history. Their GDP rose from 1960 up until the 1978 invasion due to the foreign aid received from both the USSR and the United States. From 1980 until the attacks on 9/11, their GDP fell significantly. The Afghan war economy was highly decentralized, reliant on solely foreign aid, narcotics trafficking, and a small-scale agricultural production. The war with the United States helped Afghanistan see a rise in GDP nearly 3 times the size it was in 1978. And in most years, COVID-19 has drastically, most recent years, COVID-19 has drastically impacted their economy, and which is completely reliant on small-scale production and trade. Afghanistan's growth rate has been directly associated with their aid for pretty much their entire time. They see a rise in the growth rate when foreign aid is increased and see a drop when it slows down. This drop in the growth rate is due to damaged infrastructure and a climate that causes droughts. Afghanistan is never able to be self-sufficient and reliant on their own economy, causing a large influx in their growth rate.
So this is Allie Wilson, and I'm going to be talking about the development in Afghanistan. So the characteristics of development, these are mostly statistics from 2019, apart from the GNI per capita. The life expectancy is 64.8 years. The expected years of schooling, 10.2. Median years of schooling was 3.9. But there's a drastic difference between men and women. So 6 years for Afghanistan was the mean years of schooling, and 1.9 for women. The education index was overall 0.414, and the GNI per capita in 2017, according to the purchasing power parity, was $2,229. So that makes the overall HDI, the Human Development Index, 0.511. Now, this doesn't really take into account the difference between the development index for men and women. So for the HDI, if you're just looking at females, would be lower, but the average is 0.511. Now, compared with other countries, as of 2019, Afghanistan's GNI per capita rank was 169, and the HDI rank was also 169. So in comparison with the rest of the world, the HDI is proportional with the GNI. It puts Afghanistan well into the group of countries categorized as having a low human development. So you can see here with the on the right, countries that have a pretty similar GNI per capita. Ethiopia is one of them, $2,207. Ethiopia actually has a lower HDI. However, and same thing with Mali. Mali actually has a slightly higher GNI per capita, but a lower HDI. Now Tanzania, this is like the third closest that I have on here, $2,600, actually just a bit above the GNI per capita, but the HDI is kind of significantly higher.
Hi everybody, I'm Andrew Christie. I'm talking about analyzing characteristics of growth and development in Afghanistan. So growth and development characteristics are mostly highlighted in the macroeconomic state of Afghanistan. The economy is in complete disarray after 20 years of US occupation. Right now it is lacking essential infrastructure and factories production underneath Taliban control, and it is not projected to have a very high growth rate as of recent due to the recent regime change. The political state is known to be unstable for the past 2 to 3 decades underneath numerous different regime change, and the new regime, of course, has been instituted the past year. The instability has severely impacted economic growth. The quality of governance in these institutions has been extremely poor. There's been extensive mismanagement of natural resources and state-run industries, something very characteristic of undeveloped nations. Rampant corruption at every level of government and institutions has also led to the inefficiency of this governing institution. Developmental incompetence has also led to one of the lowest HDIs globally, and the Taliban has had a history of human rights violations. Women and men are often separated, and women are not allowed to be educated past the 6th grade in their educational institutions. And Afghanistan as a whole is not well respected on the international stage. The international relations have been virtually non-existent, but of course, as we've gone through past, there was a lot of different occupying forces. US trade and US investors were allowing a lot of emerging markets in the region, but since their departure, all that has been lost. Drug trade has been the main source of income in this country for a while, and the policies do not attract favorable investment. China is the only country right now seemingly negotiating with these guys. The trade is about 46% of the GDP, and its expropriation index is 7, the highest in the world. Australia's the lowest.
So I'm also going to talk about inequality and poverty in Afghanistan. So the income distribution in Afghanistan as of 2021, and the top 10% share 41.5% of the income distribution, while the bottom 50% share 17.8%. You can kind of get a look at this graph here and see how that's changed over the last decade and a half. It has not changed much. You can see there's a slight dip here around 2011, 2012, but it pretty much went back to or I say a slight dip in the percentage of income held by the top 10%, and a increase actually in the percentage of the income held by the bottom 50%. So there's a slight decrease in inequality, but it has pretty much remained stagnant otherwise. The Gini coefficient as of 2007 was 27.82%. The portion of the population below the gender inequality index, or the percentage of the population below, the national poverty line in 2020 was 47.3%, while the proportion of employed population living off of less than $1.90 a day, which is the global poverty line, is 34.3%. And again, this is the proportion of employed people that are living below the global poverty line. Now here, what I was trying to say earlier, the gender inequality index as of 2019 was 0.655, which is 157 out of 162 countries, which is not too good. Now, poverty is relatively high. Why? A big contributor to this is food insecurity. A lot of people, I think 95% of people actually, are estimated not to get enough to eat every day in Afghanistan. Political instability has been a very consistent thing, a very consistent problem throughout this country for many decades. There's been a widening gap between the rich and the poor, so inequality has not improved recently. Lack of education, especially for women, but between both genders, there's the education is not great in Afghanistan, and infrastructure as well. So have there been any positive trends in reduction of poverty? I believe I mentioned this before, but not currently, especially with the current political instability in Afghanistan. It's actually predicted to get worse within the next few years. Past policies, there was a government attempt to kind of incite some population control and reduce the growth rate of the population in 2011. But part of this was the implementation of and encouragement of the use of contraceptives, which did not bode well in the conservative Muslim majority.
Hello, me again, and I'll be talking about the population growth in Afghanistan. Afghanistan's population growth rate has steadily decreased in the past 2 decades. This is a good indicator of economic development. However, Afghanistan was still in stage 2 of the demographic transition, as you can see in the graph to my right. The population pyramid is shaped like a pyramid, also another indicator of developing nation. Rapid population growth really occurred in the 1990s, with the highest increase being 9% in a year. Otherwise, it has been a steady 2-3% increase. The governmental policies, as we know, are very inefficient, and compared to other nations, Afghanistan has the highest birth rate and infant mortality rate in Asia. Before the regime change, the government was attempting to distribute the knowledge and resources of birth control with little to moderate success. This is due to the culture and religious practices of the region that run contrary to the government's goals, in addition to the geographical challenges of distributing materials. Women's education is also decreasing the birth rate, but due to the elimination of the right to education under the Taliban rule, those efforts have been in vain.
So now we're going to be discussing some of the current problems in Afghanistan. So the five biggest problems, arguably, are political instability and relations with other countries, especially since the Taliban take over, having them being an unrecognized government that creates a lot of problems for the government as well as for the citizens of the country. There also is not enough arable land in the country, which forces Afghanistan to rely heavily on imports from other countries. And with the regime change and the new government that is largely unrecognized, that also creates more issues with imports and exports as well. There is also mountainous geography that creates a lot of problems and also leads to poor infrastructure because transportation is hard through the mountain range, and mountain range also very much isolates a lot of the rural communities, which also leads to high levels of poverty and malnutrition as well.
Yeah, so because of that, the Taliban takeover, all international led programs have been suspended from organizations like the US Aid and the World Bank. And since agriculture is too difficult, as we learned from Johnny, to be a realistic solution for food, and internal politics showing no sign of stability, the only choice is to resume programs that are focused on improving infrastructure, restoring the economy, and combating the humanitarian crisis focused primarily on nutrition. This will obviously not be an easy task. As he said earlier, no one recognizes the Taliban government, and coordinating with them will obviously be a very difficult task. But this is really the only solution that could be offered at this time, because right now Afghanistan will not be able to do these things without outside help.
One of the key things that Afghanistan could focus on is investing in their infrastructure. Since they have been in a constant state of war for nearly 40 years, they have had poor planning on rebuilding their infrastructure. Much of the money given to them from their foreign aid has been utilized to build a war economy, leaving potential projects to lose momentum. Afghanistan is rich in natural gas, precious metals, and gold, and the transportation and distribution of these resources would help them become self-sufficient and solve some of their growth problems.
And that is the end of our presentation on Afghanistan. Thank you for watching and have a good summer.